K Motors in Newport is not your typical new car dealership. Sure, we've got a great selection of cars, trucks, and SUVs, great prices, and an award-winning service department. But did you know that we can customize your vehicle to make it look exactly like you want it to look? Come see us. We got wheels, tires, lift kits, window tint, any and everything you want to personalize your vehicle to make it unique. Just come to George Kell Motors off of Highway 67, exit 85 in Newport. Let's get started on your ride.
In your package, you have some information, and I'm not going to go over everything that's in there because it would take literally most of the night to do it. But look in your packet and look at the Newport School District Charitable Foundation and what they accomplished this past year. The bottom line on the numbers that were given by the Charitable Foundation was $44,528 in change, and you will see that some of the things that they did, they contributed $26,000 to the Newport School District for $2,000 per grade to do different things. Now, think about what most monies are given for are those who exceed and succeed and do the best. But some of this money, 50% of it, was used for the lower academic students to make them strive and encourage themselves to do better. So we're not only trying to honor those who do the best, we're trying to honor those who need help, who need a little assistance to do better, so they can all graduate as Greyhounds and maybe someday all come back here and be part of this banquet. If you look at this whole list of things, it takes forever to do it, and I'm not going to do that. But if you go through the list of awards, and please take those with you, and when you get home where it's a little cooler and you got a little more time, please take a look at what has happened with the money that all of you gave, and hopefully you will give again to this great cause. Then you move back through and you go to the Newport School District and you see things that happened with the Newport School District. Odyssey of the Mind, one of these worldwide events that has taken place, Newport is really doing well in the Odyssey of the Mind category. We had 3 high school teams qualified for the World Championship and 3 teams placed #1 in the state. And in the math, and James Eddy knows this, he and I were both great at math. Northeast Arkansas High School Math Contest, 33% of the 63 awards went to Newport. 33 of 63. And Miss Holden, that's 52.4%. I did that in my head. I can go on, but the list is too long, and some of our awardees tonight are our inductees for the 2nd annual award have so much to be thankful for, so much to be talked about, so many things to be alluded to that I'm not going to go through that list. But again, please take those lists, look at what's happened, look at what Newport High School does. And you know, bad news sells newspapers. Good news doesn't sell much of anything, except maybe a car or two. Take a look at those lists, look at them, see what your money's doing. And again, before we're over tonight, we're going to ask you if you'll re-sign up for the Alumni Association, so you'll give more money, so we can give another $45,000 next year to do what we want to do.
Good evening, I'm Susan Smith, and I have the honor of presenting the Excellence in Education Award on behalf of the Newport Special School District Charitable Foundation. This is the first award of its kind for the foundation, and we hope to present it annually to an outstanding educator. I promise I will not go by Laura's house in this presentation, but here are just the facts. This teacher has an exceptional mathematical mind and the passion to educate students not only about the mystery of math, but life. She has accompanied students for over 32 years to the regional and state math contests sponsored by the Council of Teachers of Mathematics. These students have consistently placed at the highest levels and have earned Newport School District statewide recognition for their superior math department. She has served as a sponsor of the Newport High School Whippets, junior high school cheerleaders, junior high pep club, and a senior class sponsor for over 17 years. Since she was 19 years of age, she has challenged over 4,000 students to reach their fullest potential. She has educated doctors, lawyers, dentists, accountants, engineers, scientists, and even ordinary moms and dads. Students are forewarned about this teacher long before they cross the threshold of her room. Her first assignment is to write this down. It's her phone number. Call me anytime. Many do, but it better be before 9 p.m. She currently teaches Algebra 1, Pre-AP Algebra 1, Pre-AP Pre-Calculus, and Trigonometry. To quote her, the greatest thing about teaching is seeing students succeed in whatever they choose to do. She is a wife, a mother of 2 boys, and the grandmother of 3 very bright grandchildren. The 2010 recipient is a veteran of 45 years in education, and all of her years of teaching have been in Newport. I am proud to call her my friend, and it is an honor to present the Education Award to Gloria Holden.
Well, it's time now for all of us to settle in and think about the inductees tonight for the second class of the Hall of Fame. And I want to ask you, before everybody gets busy after this, once we're done and you have all your awards, would you hang around and let your pictures be taken? We want to get you, and we want to get last year's class too at the same time if we possibly can. But so I know everybody's going to be in a hurry to leave. First speaker is kind of the favorite son of Newport, Arkansas. Grew up around these parts, graduated from Newport High School. He's been somewhat successful in his career. We're all proud to call him our favorite son, and we're proud to call him Governor. So, if you will, welcome our good friend and one of the inaugural members of the first class, Governor Mike Beebe.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to read some stuff first. And really, I think we'll be a little more brief than we were last year, but I can't promise that. So here we go. I want to read some stuff first, and then I want to tell you a true story. I get to introduce posthumously the late John W. Mullins as an inductee. And I know Mrs. Mullins is here and Patty's here, and we're so honored to have them here. Let me just, for those of you who don't remember, moved here after Mr. Mullins' influence, or those of you who are visiting here because some of your friends or relatives are being inducted, probably need to know this, and some of you need to be reminded that already knew it. He was a native here and graduated in 1940 from Newport High School, and he served as superintendent of this school district for 22 years until he retired in 1984. He graduated from ASU, earned a master's degree in education from George Peabody College in Nashville, and a specialist degree in education from the University of Tennessee at Memphis. He served in World War II as a Master Sergeant General, and he spent 22 months in a German prisoner of war camp. He was awarded the Purple Heart. After the war, he was superintendent for 3 Missouri school districts, Hayti, Portageville, and Puxico. He became superintendent in Newport in 1962, and during his tenure, the district was considered a model by the State Department of Education due to improvements that he helped introduce. Under his leadership, schools in the district were integrated peacefully with no interruption to students' education. No small feat at the time. Mr. Mullins received many honors in the field of education, among them serving as president of the Arkansas School Administrators Association and on the executive board of the Arkansas Association of Professional Educators. He was named the Newport Area Chamber of Commerce Citizen of the Year in 1984. He served 2 terms as Chamber President, was President of the Newport Rotary Club, Rotary District Governor, and was named a Paul Harris Fellow of Rotary. He was active in the civic and church communities. He taught a men's Bible class for years at First United Methodist Church. He was a Mason, was a member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion. We lost Mr. Mullins on March 6th, 1986. He was 65 years old. His wife, Mary Jane, and Patty Jo, Dr. Mullins, as I call her, they still live here, and most of you know and love and welcome them as part of the Newport family. Now to the story. I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, so if I do, y'all just don't cry out too loud. But before Mr. Mullins came, we'd gone through a transition period, and our former superintendent had died, and we'd had some transition period during that time, and we didn't have a heck of a lot of discipline. Billy Wiggins did all he could, but he needed help with this Newport bunch. And now we weren't bad, we weren't evil, but we were real rambunctious, mischievous, and some might say out of control. I say we, because I'm sure I was a part of that. I was not nearly as bad as Bill Keaty, I'm sure, but I was part of it. And it was a culture shock when this strict disciplinarian, this no-nonsense, take no prisoners, do it my way or else guy came to take over the Newport School District. Now, in a different age and in a different time, if we'd been used to a lot of strict discipline and a lot of I dotting and T crossing and not messing around in the halls and other things that we did, it might have been a little easier to take. But with the abrupt departure from the freedom that we thought we all were entitled to the rigid, almost boot camp atmosphere, General, that we ended up having to adhere to, was a culture shock. Now, Ms. Mullins, there were stories about your husband. There are stories about your husband when he was our age. I don't know if they were true or not, but we certainly took them as true. And being 16 and 17 and 15-year-old boys, we were totally irreverent in a secretive and cowardly sort of way. We weren't about to confront him head on. And he gave what I recall to be that first speech in front of the auditorium with the whole high school, maybe the whole junior high school too, gathered. I was sitting next to Tommy Ashley. Now, what are y'all laughing about? And he started jawing, and we started jawing to each other about how we heard Mr. Mullins used to raise all kinds of cane, and he was hard to handle, and he's going to make us behave, and he was one of the greatest misbehaviors Newport ever had, and he could do all this stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And we probably made a bunch of stuff up. What we didn't know was his mama was sitting behind us in the auditorium. And the next day, Tommy and I got called to the superintendent's office. I don't recall a whole lot of what he said, but I do recall the message. And the message was, you don't know anything about me, and even if you did know something about me, that's not the point. I'm the boss, you're the student. We're going to have a first-class school here, and we're going to do it the right way, and you're going to behave, or I'm going to know why not. And in the meantime, I don't want to see your face in my office again unless it's to receive an academic award. I never even whispered Dr. Mullins' name in the hallway. Years later, after I'd graduated from college, and after I had a law degree, and after I had just gotten into the state senate, I came to see Mr. Mullins, as I called him. He was always proud of me. I don't know why, but he always expressed that. It wasn't just me. He was proud of Joe Miles. I don't know if you know. He was proud of all of his students who he saw with different skill levels and different traits and different attributes and different true talents. And even those that fell by the wayside and slipped away, he still had a soft spot for them. Oh, we thought he was tough, and I'm sure he was tough, but he had a big old heart too, a big old soft heart, where he cared about his teachers, he cared about his students, and he cared about his community. So it's with a great deal of honor that I present posthumously to John W. Mullins this induction award into the Newport High School Hall of Fame, and Dr. Patty Jo Mullins is going to accept it.
Y'all please bear with me. Sooner or later, the decision has to be made as to when an individual will hang it up as an active participant in the field of public education. That is how my daddy began his final letter to all his teachers and staff, dated May 17, 1983, when he was 62. Like most effective leaders, he knew when his time was past and when it was time to move on. He ended his tenure with the utmost respect and adoration for the special people he so lovingly tendered for 21 years. A diverse and special group of countless teachers, staff, and students under his charge throughout his career. In the same letter referenced before, he discussed the fact that he and his faculty faced many obstacles and general hard times. One can only imagine the problems he faced in the career spanning from the 1960s, 70s, and the early 80s. From budget crises and unruly parents to the most tumultuous issues facing educators' integration. He came into a school district in financial despair. Needless to say, this tough, no-nonsense man took control and eventually made Newport one of the top schools in Arkansas. It became a model for the state's Department of Education for the numerous policies and improvements he instituted. In the issue over integration, my daddy faced some of the toughest moments as superintendent. In 1968, a moment when passion and fervor still ran high, he united all of Newport's children without disrupting their educations and their lives. Two of the most significant attributes that defined my father were a sense of patriotism as well as an emphasis on community pride. John Mullins believed in the American experience and what it represented. As a soldier in World War II and a concentration camp survivor, he endorsed the American traditions that define the greatest generation, proudly saluting Old Glory, standing at attention during the national anthem, and working within one's community for its overall betterment. As a citizen of Jackson County and superintendent of Newport Public Schools for 21 years, my dad had an enduring sense that the foundation of any experience was grounded in the educational endeavors that impacted an individual. In his world, student did what teachers required, and teachers understood the principle that hard work at any age defined a person's future success. He endorsed the beliefs of the educational philosopher Horace Mann, who stated, "Education is the great equalizer in the conditions of men." John Mullins was a tremendous supporter of education. He would be so pleased today with the educational opportunities offered in Jackson County. He might have been a bit embarrassed to be honored tonight. He probably would say he was not deserving of such accolades. Just a hard-working fella doing his job to the best of his abilities. In my opinion, He impacted many lives with his straightforward, honest values, coupled with his demand for excellence. On behalf of my mother and myself, I would like to express our sincere appreciation for this honor and to encourage everyone to remember the kinds of doctrines which John Mullins endorsed. This behavior will not only keep his memory alive, but preserve the types of values he held so dear. Governor Beebe, Mother and I are so appreciative to you. He was so proud of what you became, and now he would be so proud of your accomplishments. I can hear him say, just think, he was a kid from Amigan, Arkansas. He always believed you set your mind to anything and you will accomplish your goals. Thanks again to the Hall of Fame committee. You have made Mother and me so proud. And thanks to all you former employees during Daddy's tenure. He appreciated your hard work and helped to make Newport Schools the absolute greatest. May God bless you all.
It's hard for me to follow that, and as always, John Pennington and Mike Brown, the height of the podium here is always too low. It is my honor tonight to introduce to you my long lifetime friend and former teammate of the 1969 undefeated Greyhounds, Major General James E. Simmons. Now, I'll probably mess that Major General up some during the deal because he's always just James Eddie to me. Now, in itself, just being part of that team, in my opinion, would be an achievement that most people never imagine. But that's just the beginning for James Eddie. In high school, James Eddie lettered not only in football, but basketball and track, and was selected the outstanding player of the 68-69 basketball team. After high school, James Eddie attended Arkansas State University on a football scholarship, where he earned 3 letters and a national championship ring for their 1970 football team. Also, while attending ASU, he was active in the ROTC program, where in his senior year, served as a cadet colonel for that program, and after graduating in 1974, was selected by the Secretary of Army as the highest ranked cadet commissioned into the regular Army. In 1974, James Eddie was commissioned as second lieutenant in the Armor. Over the next 34 years, James Eddie commanded armor, infantry, cavalry, aviation formations in the United States, Europe, Northeast Asia, and the Middle East. I'm just going to mention a couple of the assignments that he commanded, as there's not enough time for me to list them all. James Eddie was commander of Combined Joint Task Force in Kuwait, Deputy Commanding General, 3rd Corps at Fort Hood, Texas, Deputy Commanding General, 3rd Corps, Iraq, Deputy Commanding General, Multinational Corps, Iraq. In this capacity, he commanded the day-to-day combat operations of 17 brigades located throughout Iraq with a daily strength of over 39,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Major General Simmons, as I should be calling him more often, has received more medals than I can list, but a few of those are the Distinguished Service Medal, Department of Defense Superior Service Medal, the Legion of Merit with three Oak Leaf clusters, the Bronze Star, and the Air Medal. He was presented by the President of Korea the Order of National Security Merit for his 4 years of service in the Republic of Korea. James Eddie is also a master Army aviator with more than 4,300 hours in 5 different types of Army aircraft. He flew 321 missions in Iraq. In 2006, James Eddie was inducted into the ASU Hall of Honor, and also that same year into the ASU ROTC Wall of Honor. In 2009, he was listed as one of the top 100 graduates of ASU in the university's first 100 years. Now, the best thing, in my opinion, that happened to Major General Simmons was not in athletics nor in his military career. However, it is sitting next to him, his wife, Rita. Some of the things that we did when we were in high school and get-togethers, I was informing my wife I couldn't tell. I will tell you one thing. James Eddie would come home off and on throughout his career, and we'd always have a tendency to get together. When we were kids, I lived at Campbell Station, and we would go out to, he'd come out and spend the weekend with me, and we'd go down to a little 3 mounds, we called them 3 hills, and we'd play Army. We'd throw dirt clods at one another, and we'd hide behind the hills, and we'd have a big time. Well, one time he come in, I said, "What's it like, James Eddie?" He said, "You remember how we used to go down to 3 hills and play Army?" I said, "Well, it's just about like that, except I get to play with $1 million toys." And I'll tell you one more thing, too, because he come in and told me one time, and I was always fascinated by his flying. James Eddie said, we were watching some war movie or something, John Wayne on the TV, and I was saying, "Man, that looks great. You're flying that helicopter and you blah-da-da-da-da, you know, you're shooting and stuff." And he said, "I got news for you, it's not like that." He said, "You're flying that helicopter and you let loose of that 50 caliber machine gun and it'll turn that helicopter around. So that's why they do it in such small bursts." I said, "Well, what about those rockets, you know, where you blow up tanks and stuff?" And he says, "If you're flying that helicopter and you let that rocket off, you better have your seatbelt on, because that baby's going to stop in midair. It'll jolt you." They don't show that in the John Wayne movies. Besides James Eddie's wife, Rita, James Eddie has a son, James Franklin, a wife, Michelle, and 2 grandchildren. At present, James Eddie and Rita are retired and live in St. Port Joe, Florida, where they enjoy fishing, golf, and trying to spoil their 2 grandsons. With that, it's my great honor and privilege to present to you Major General James E. Simmons.
He'll understand if the rest of you won't. The remarks I make tonight are my own and do not reflect a position of the Department of the Army or the Department of Defense. Roger, thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks to the foundation for the selection, and thanks to all of you who put this together tonight. It's a wonderful evening. I want to express my support for the work that the foundation is doing. Nothing could be more important than giving as many as possible access to education. Education is the door to success in life. There are no guarantees, but without it, life can be a significant uphill struggle. I want to thank Roger and Carol for hosting us, John Pennington for notifying us. He'll tell you the story about that. I'd like to recognize my uncle Boots Simmons and his wife Dale, my cousin Mary Wanda and her husband for coming here tonight. I think most of you understand that almost all of my memories of Newport are linked in some way to Roger and a few others that are here tonight. So what should I say on such an occasion? First of all, with all of the distinguished people who have graduated from Newport High School, I am indeed honored. And it is a special honor to be included in a group so distinguished as the one that is here tonight. But the truth is, I really don't know much about Newport. I left here 41 years ago, and I was just a boy whenever I left. My memories of Newport and the high school in particular are pure. They are unaffected by seeing other generations of students passing through the doors of the Newport public school system. I see it all through the eyes of a boy. So no war stories about the good old days. There are too many eyewitnesses. And as my good friend Stan McChrystal said here recently, nothing spoils a good war story like an eyewitness. I was blessed to have wonderful parents. My mother was a very intelligent and focused woman. My father, a big, gentle man, a peacemaker. What people today would call a people person. They provided a home that was just right for a growing young boy. Enough freedom to use my imagination and enough discipline to understand the difference between right and wrong. I can't imagine a better way to be raised, and we always had others in the community that were willing to look out for us whenever we had strayed a little too far or stayed a little too late. The education that I received here in Newport provided me with an idea that if I worked hard and continued to study, that I might be successful at something. I was not sure what it was, but I was hopeful for an opportunity. The truth is, and there's those here that know this, I love school. I hardly ever missed a day. I got here as early as I could. I can still see the 364 Chevys parked out front. I was inspired to see the world for myself by teachers like Mr. Powell and Mrs. Rogers, while teachers like Mrs. Carr made me read poetry. Mrs. Newell encouraged me to recite the Mountain Whippoorwill in front of my classmates. I can still see their faces. They wanted to laugh, but they were afraid of the consequences. Counts, Duncan, Massey were unbelievable. Our achievements on the sports field were exceptional. We were better as a team than we were as individuals. And our records speak for themselves. I was blessed with real friends here in Newport. Roger, Sam Llewellyn, John and Bruce Pennington, Lewis Collier, Terry Dillon, Herschel Jones, Little Bud Black. We had some great times together. And one that was lost early, Earl Dean Pollard. My life, as Roger has indicated, gained real meaning on the 11th of December, 1971, when Rita and I were married. She's loved me, motivated me, moved all over the world with me, lived in some unbelievable conditions. She's persevered through all the tough times, and I love her with all my heart. We're fortunate to have a wonderful son who survived the constant moves, 7 different schools, and a lack of permanent childhood friends. He's married to a wonderful young lady named Michelle from California, and they're raising 2 very young, energetic, and very coachable young boys in Fort Worth. So, Roger has told you the Army's version of my career, and I have been asked 100 times already here tonight, what did I do in the Army? So I thought I would share with you very briefly how I remember my 34 years as a soldier. I've seen the sun rise in 63 countries. I've visited another 18 in the dead of night without having my passport stamped. I led the Manchus over the Alaskan mountain range. I put in the ropes for 780 hard and tough men to go up an 800-foot vertical ice wall with the base starting at 10,000 feet. I crossed glacier-fed streams on rope bridges that my men had emplaced and watched as the northern lights barred overhead. I frostbit both my hands. I dislocated a shoulder and broke my ankle twice. I rode an Arabian stallion around the pyramids under a full moon. I saved the life of the oldest son of a local sheikh. Crossed the Sinai on a camel. Spent the night at St. Catherine's and climbed to Mount Sinai to watch the sunrise. I learned about Moses over a fire under the stars from a Bedouin. I watched a comet burn across the high desert sky. I flew into a minefield to pull out 2 horribly wounded young men and helped Pat Fife that night scrub the blood from the floor of 202. I patrolled the border between East and West at the height of the Cold War. Discovered Leberkäse, the best use of Spam that I've ever found. Conquered the Op 4 at the National Training Center, then spent 2 years trying to teach others how to do the same. I introduced Korea to the 6th United States Cavalry and launched out over cold, dark waters in Apaches with external tanks to launch Hellfire missiles. Participated in the Crab Wars, negotiated face-to-face with the North at Panmunjom. I dined with the President of Korea in his home. I was inducted into the Al-Qatani tribe and dressed in Bedouin splendor went for a ride across the desert on a beautiful Arabian stallion with 300 of my fellow tribesmen. I knocked out another tooth. This time I was throwing grenades instead of footballs. I spent 5 years splitting time between Iraq and Fort Hood. I helped design and participated in the surge. I've stood on the top of the ziggurat where Abraham, or as we know him, Abraham, received the word of God to go west. I've watched great young Americans expose themselves to direct fire to ensure that only the enemy was killed and not the women and children that were being used as human shields. I've walked the streets of Bakuba with 29 great young American soldiers and each of our hands held by an Iraqi child. The kids always know who the good guys are. I had my wingman shot down, presented Purple Hearts to 2 members of my own personal security detachment. I've known the exhilaration of a 5,000 foot per minute rate of climb and a 4G turn at the top. I've experienced the arrogance of a man who has closed with the enemy and survived. I've been to war. I've been peacekeeping, peacemaking. I did some things that don't fall under any of those categories. I've been hot, cold, wet, hungry, hurt, sick, scared, lonely, and really, really tired. I've lived the life of a soldier, and it's been a great ride. Thank you very much for the honor tonight.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Johnston, also a graduate of Newport High School, class of 70. Do I hear you? There's 2 of you out here, I know. I saw you. Joe Miles and Mike Moran. Okay. I'm here to introduce my sister, Martha Johnston, as she is inducted into the NHS Alumni Hall of Fame. And Martha, there's only one thing that would make this night better, and that would be if Mom and Dad and David L. were here, okay? And Mom's here, I'm wearing her pin. Dad's here, Amy Blackburn made me a purse with one of Dad's ties, and I'm carrying it tonight. But I didn't have anything of David L.'s I could wear, so he'll just be in my heart. And it's a great night because this is one of the few times, Martha, that you don't try to pass yourself off as my twin. when we go places and people will say, which one of you is older? Martha always says, she is. And then she'll try to pass as a twin. So at least here, everybody knows we're not twins. My sister has always been an overachiever. You know, some children have imaginary friends, and they say that that makes you more creative and you're better with verbal skills. Well, my sister didn't have one imaginary friend. She had two. And I was planning to tell you the names, but I did an ROI, Return on Investment Evaluation. And I decided that it would be in my best interest not to share those names because she gets the last word after I speak, and she knows as much about me as I know about her. So I might take bribes later, but I'm not telling the names now. Martha is a graduate of Oklahoma State University. She got her bachelor's and her master's there. She was inducted to the Hall of Fame for her College of Human Environmental Sciences, formerly known as Home Ec. And they have to change all the names now. And I believe Amy Blackburn and Larry Williams were there, and that's when we first met you, because you were assigned to be Martha's escorts for the weekend. And so we go back quite a ways before they came to Newport, and we're very happy that you could be with us tonight. Martha was then inducted to the Hall of Fame for the entire university, Oklahoma State University. And one of the other, who else was inducted that night? I believe it was the man that invented the first PC, personal computer. He is the man that then sold his company to the man, what's his name, owns Microsoft? This is the man that invented the first PC, sold the company, and now you know the history. But he was also on that, at that event when she was inducted to the entire University Hall of Fame. After she left Oklahoma State, her first job was with the American Meat Institute in Chicago. And then the second position in Chicago was with John Morrell Meat Company. One of her jobs when working for John Morrell is she had to go out to the packing plants. Well, word came to the packing plants that this young female from Arkansas was coming to view the packing plant. And the guys said, we'll fix her. First thing we're going to do is take her to the kill floor. We'll have her passing out or throwing up in no time. What they didn't know is Martha is a former Miss Rodeo Arkansas, grew up on the farm, helped our dad with the cattle, and on the credenza behind her desk was a photo of Martha with her arm around our pet Brahma bull. Well, she had kind of heard that they might be planning this, so when they got there and they were introduced, the first thing Martha said is, let's start with the kill floor. Well, that just deflated all these guys, ruined the whole thing. Didn't get even a tear out of Martha that day. Her next job was with Southern Progress Corporation, the parent company for Southern Living. For 13 years, Martha was the director of the cooking school, and many of you have attended some of those Southern Living cooking schools in the past. And then she was promoted to Vice President of Business Development. And her job was to go around the U.S. and talk to food companies and tell them why advertising in Southern Living would be good for their company. And about sometimes she had to do a whole seminar on Southern foods. Well, she had a few companies she worked with that were a challenge. One was Karo syrup. Yes, they were going to advertise, and they had a brilliant idea. They had a brand new use for Karo syrup. They wanted to use Karo syrup instead of sugar for everything, and the first thing they were going to use it in was iced tea. It's not going to flavor iced tea, so she had to explain to them why that wouldn't be a very good idea, and maybe we could research some other ideas. Another company was Pillsbury. They were marketing some new country biscuits in the can and some southern biscuits and buttermilk biscuits, and they came to the corporate headquarters in Birmingham. And they tried some of the product, and Martha said, "This doesn't taste like buttermilk." "Oh, yeah, it's got powdered buttermilk in it. It's buttermilk biscuits." And this went on quite a while, and finally she looked at him and said, "How many of you have ever tasted a homemade buttermilk biscuit?" No one. She said, "Y'all come with me." She took them downstairs from her office on the 5th floor down to the 1st floor to where the test kitchen was. Promptly opened up the cabinets, pulled out the flour, all the ingredients, and there was buttermilk in the refrigerator. She was good. And without a recipe, began making buttermilk biscuits by scratch. Put them in the oven, and they were just going, "Well, I don't know, we just think our buttermilk biscuits are great." I don't know. About 30 minutes or halfway into cooking time, they started sniffing. "Oh, that's what they smell like? Oh, well, And then they tasted them, and they went, "Oh, now we get it." Sorry. So she has had quite a few interesting companies to work with when she's been marketing for Southern Living. She was also on the startup board that started Cooking Light magazine. Some of you may not realize that. And since I was also in the nutrition and food area, several people asked me, "Why don't you go work for your sister? That'd be great. Y'all could work together." Well, my answer was, my sister has a birthright to boss me. Since she's the older one, she's not going to get paid to do it. But my sister has always been very strong and very confident and works hard at all she does. And a couple of years ago, she had one of the biggest fights ahead of her. She was diagnosed with stage 2 ovarian cancer. Found it early, which is very, very unusual. Surgery took care of all of it. She had her chemo treatments, but she took that on like that was her job. And between treatments, it was exercise and the right foods, and I've never seen anybody take it on like that. And once it was over and the doctor said, "Okay, you're clear, you're fine, you don't have to come back to 6 months," it was kind of like, well, what do I do now? This is what I've been doing for so long. She puts all herself into whatever she does. And Martha, we are sisters by birth, but I'm glad to say that we are friends by choice. And it is my pleasure and my honor to present this award to my sister, Martha Johnston.
Well, thank you. I am very honored to be here, and I would like to thank the foundation for including me in the second class. I feel very humbled about this and a little bit in terms of wondering what to say and what I can add to the occasion that might be sort of fun and sort of interesting for you all. The first thing I would say to you is, in my career, the influence of this community and these schools has been huge. You all know that I come from a very strong family background where we were involved in education and information and being involved with the community and taking charge. It was part of that old thing about, if you don't like it, get in and fix it. Don't just sit there and gripe about it. Get up and do something about it. And that's sort of where we were with schools. When I grew up, it wasn't a question of if you were going to school. Everything in your life and your life plan was based on after you get your college degree, then you can do X, Y, or Z. And I have to say that the school systems and being here in this community gave me a lot of the tools that I needed to cope with and grow in my business career. One of those things was a sense of belonging and a sense of being able to try out things in the community, whether it was in the schools or volunteer activities. The love of this community and this town gave me the ability to try, to fail, to get up and try again, and not be afraid to go for it. That is a huge gift and a huge lesson that you all as a community and a foundation continue to give. And I am so proud of you for it because it's something that I believe so strongly in. And I believe it gives the youth in this community the opportunity to grow and try things because they're our future. That education of them is so important. I got a sense of perspective on life. I got a sense of perspective on diversity, both ethnic and socioeconomics, which are incredibly helpful in everything I've done in my career. As I look at some of my godchildren that are raised in larger communities around the country, in Chicago and Birmingham, and I look at the communities they've been involved in, they don't have these opportunities that we have because the diversity in the communities where they're going to school is much more narrow. So that, I think, is a true gift that we often overlook in terms of being from a smaller community and comparing ourselves to other places. It's a true gift. I think about career days and citizenship things I learned. Time management is one thing I learned a lot about when I was in high school. Gosh, I think back, and it was something that took a while to get to me, but you know, I think back to the time when I was in Billy Hare's general science class. And I remember going in there and thinking about all the things that were going on in that class. And, you know, I studied really hard for that class, but every day before class, so maybe 5 minutes before it starts, particularly on days when we were going to have a quiz, there was a guy in my class, taught me a great deal about time management. He'd come in and he'd say, "Well, did you study last night?" I'd say, "Yeah, did you?" "Well, I was at study hall over at the Ashleys, but nah, I didn't get too much studying done. What do you think she's going to ask on the test?" And I'd tell him and go through the list of what I thought we ought to study and what we should know for that test. And I'll be darned if every time that happened, I got an A and Mike Beebe got a B. And the lesson in that, his time management skills were something I admired. I mean, I took that lesson with me through life in my career. I just can't tell you. There were a few others I won't tell you about. I learned a few other lessons from him, but we'll sort of leave that one be. I think the other thing is a sense of humor and a sense of yourself and who you are. And a school and a community can give you that and help you grow within yourself and find out and be willing to try things and see who you are. There's not a clear path. James Eddy said that when he spoke. There is not a clear path. There are no guarantees. But my goodness, the education can give you the opportunity to try things you never thought about. I never thought when I was in Newport High School, in Rosemary Fortenberry's home ec class, that I would have the opportunity to meet and know Julia Child as a friend and as a fellow professional. And I look back at those experiences and how much I learned and how much it tempered my desire to learn more. And when I met Julia Child, the one thing that I realized about her is, number one, she was very much both feet on the ground, and number two, all about learning. Any and every meeting we ever went to, she was in the front row. Now, I'm the first to admit, when I was in high school, I was not in the front row, because in those days, you sat alphabetically. So Mary Jackson sat in front of me every class we had together. Mike was across the way, because he was higher in the alphabet. But gosh, that education thing keeps going throughout life, and it's something that's really fun. I think the other thing that a foundation in the schools can do is help our young people find a passion for living and for life. And I think that's really important as they look ahead to try to find a career and find out where they're going and what they're doing. I always knew that Newport schools and Newport citizens had my back. They were supporting me, and I still feel that to this day. This is home to me, even though I've been gone a lot of years. But I've got a lot of friends in this group, and taking that friendship and passing it down through the schools and through the generations can bring a lot of benefits to the community and to the state as a whole. I guess as I look ahead, you know, some of the things that I see that the foundations in the education have done for me, and I guess this is pretty much a family legacy. My philosophy of education is, and learning and getting ahead in life. Number one, learn everything you can learn. And that's an ongoing thing with me. I try to, I think a saying that my daddy had that some of you will recognize: you don't learn a lot with your mouth open. You know, he had a few of these little sayings that we just throw out there, and that was one of them. And I've found that that has stood me very well. They had that same rule in class, too, and sometimes it even worked when we were in school. The other is share as much as you can. Help other people, and that is what this foundation is all about, and I think that's wonderful. I look back over the years that I was here and was able to share with Lynn Minor Hare, Amanda Brown, Martha Latham's son Dan. When they were looking at careers and where they were and where they could go, it was my pleasure and privilege to be able to spend time with them and have them come do an internship with us at Southern Living. Or in Dan's case, after he had been out of school and worked a while, he decided he wanted to get into the culinary profession. And he and I had a wonderful conversation about some people that I knew in New York that might help him get started and get involved. And he ended up being able to go there and go through some of those contacts to get started in the food culinary business world. Part of that sharing and giving back is something that I think is really important, and it is very important in a community like Newport to be able to give back. Also, be the best that you can be. I never learned to quit trying. It's something that I was always challenged to do better, do more, and see where you can go. And to be thankful for every blessing you have. And I consider this community one of the biggest blessings in my life. And the people in this room who gave to me as I was going through, I only hope that I can do a little bit of that in terms of giving back and making a difference in the lives of others. I think in a community, when you have a community of words and not of deeds, you get a garden in town that's sort of full of weeds, as I like to say. I think when you take a foundation like this with willing hands, giving hearts, and an ability to write a check and give back to the community, you are indeed planting seeds for the future, and you are indeed planting a fabulous garden. This is one of the best investments y'all can make in this community. It's one of the best we can make to the future, not just of this community, but of this state. Believe in the youth, believe in education, have their backs, and be an inspiration to them. Thank you.
Before I start talking about one of my favorite all-time people, I got to say one thing to James Eddy. All those brave things he did and how nervous he was when he was climbing those rock walls and doing all that. You remember how scared we were in the 7th grade when we played Spin the Bottle with Mary and Pam? Yeah. I remember how scared you were. I was more scared. If you had to think about an original Greyhound man, one person who personifies being a Greyhound, it'd have to be John Minor. Let me read a couple of things about Mr. John, some of his accomplishments. He was born in Newport and he married Martha Jarvis Minor. Thank you. That's all we have to deal with. When you think about him and you know how active he still is, even though his son John Jr. has graduated, going on to great things, he still is very active in the Booster Club, the Greyhound Club, and all the things that he does. But there's a couple things in his past that some of you know about and some of you don't. He was a 4-star letterman. He got a letter in everything that he did here. He was in football, baseball, basketball, track, all state, all district, all this, all that. And did you know that he ran for the Razorbacks at the University of Arkansas in the Tulsa, Missouri, and Southeast Conference relays? And Minor had made Mr. John Minor, if I may, had made the statement that he was pretty fast and he was going to do a pretty good job. And so he went to those relays and he ran a personal best. Now remember, this is back some time ago when they ran 100, not 110 meters. He ran a 100-yard dash in 9.8 seconds. 9.8. And finished dead last. Good job. And see, the thing about John Minor is you think about him and you think, look, 2 tables of his wonderful family. He has his grandchildren and his beautiful children. And you think about when you're a grandfather, and I'm not one yet, but I hope to be, but you think about him, and you think about grandchildren and how they name their grandparents. His name is Boss. That's the name that his grandchildren call him. Because that's the name he told them to call him. They did not name him that. He named himself that, so he is the Boss. He once pulled a trick on Mr. Keaty, and it worked out to where Mr. Keaty had told him, Mr. John had told Mr. Keaty he needed to put a certain thing on his door for a certain thing, kind of a requiem for the masses kind of thing, and that it would be an honor for him to do it, and he ought to do it because all the businesses were doing it. Well, he did it. Came to find out, Mr. Keaty found out that it was a trick. So when Mr. Minor comes into Keaty's one stop, Keaty Sportsman one stop, Mr. Keaty says to him, I don't appreciate that trick you pulled on me. I don't like it at all. And he starts to say something about it. Mr. Keaty reaches into the counter, brings out a gun that's loaded with blanks and shot Mr. Minor about 3 or 4 times, and you fell to the ground, didn't you? That's the kind of guy we're dealing with, Boss. That's the kind of guy we got to deal with. What a wonderful family man. He has 4 children, Lynn, John Jr., Susan, and Martha. We all know them, and he has 8 great-grandchildren. He was the high school class president, FFA president, student body president, Mr. Lakeside. 21 letters in sports in junior high and senior high. All state, all district, all that. Eagle Scout, honor graduate, went to University of Arkansas, Kappa Sigma fraternity man. And I've already told you the good news about his track record. Member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, served as a lot of officers there, different things. Well, let me tell you about Mr. John Miner. There are a lot of us who come and do things when people ask us to do them. Well, listen to this. He started the Greyhound Booster Club. He started the Greyhound All Sports Banquet. He started the Lions Club radio auction. He started the Newport's first Ducks Unlimited committee and banquet. See, a lot of us will jump on the bandwagon when the work's done. Like me, you can ask me to come do this all day. Somebody else already started it. You're as good looking as I am. This is nothing. But you think about the things that people like Mr. John Miner has done for this community, what he started. Listen to a few other things. Chamber of Commerce president, school board member, board of directors, Medallion Foods, a scoutmaster, American Legion summer baseball committee member, Jackson County Cattlemen's Association, country club board member, outstanding agent in insurance, and you can read in your brochure about all the things he's accomplished there. But the thing that means the most to me is what he's done to this community. The things he did for me and Roger Brand and James Eddy. He and Mr. Frank Pleggy and Jeff Ellis and those who taped ankles and who called our names when they were watching us play ball back in '68. John Miner's one of those guys who's done all of that. He deserves to quit. He deserves to just go back and sit down and watch somebody else do it. But he doesn't do that. He started this booster club thing all over again, had a turkey bingo, and guess who they asked to be the turkey? I ain't scared. But he keeps going and he keeps giving and he keeps doing for Newport, Arkansas, or for Newport High School. He's one of those guys, when he was growing up and playing sports, he never did quit. And he never will quit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. John Miner.
Well, what do you expect from John Pennington? I thought, I said, now, John, honor me, please. I need that one time. And what he's trying to do to me is roast me. What do you think about that? But listen, thank y'all, thank you, thank you. This is the nicest thing that's ever happened to me. And I guess why it means so much to me is growing up in Newport was the happiest days of my life. When I was growing up, I was in high school, and fortunately, coming back to Newport, raising a family, and being in business here has just been a dream come true. I was very, very lucky. Had the best parents. I go back, I want to tell you, the old family goes back when Jacksonport started moving into Newport. The old grandfather settled here. And I think this is, show how far that our roots go back. My daddy, my mother, my brother, my wife, my brother's children, and my children all were born in Newport, and we finished and attended Newport High School here. Now that's something I'm very proud of. Mama, I had a good mama and a daddy that would do anything. I didn't know how to keep up with it, but Mama always told me, said, John, life is a gift. And that's so true. But adding to that, I felt like being born in Newport, Arkansas was a gift too. It's been my life. The people have just leadership. Look what you have here. Just outstanding leadership. Good people, fun people. They're here when we need each other. It's always been that way, and it always will be. Go back, and I'm sure all of us have a little something in our life, but I've got to tell this story. By the way, I want to tell you something really makes me feel good is my class of 52 is here tonight, and I really appreciate that. There's 2 tables. But you know, we every once in a while get in trouble. In high school, of course, I did everything everybody does. My closest friend was Harold Mantu, and Harold had an old car that was made in the 40s. John, you probably have seen these, but the back of the front seat would fold forward, and in the middle was a cubby hole or an opening. And Harold and myself, like teenagers were doing, we were cruising Newport, and guess why? Well, we were lucky enough, we picked up one of the prettiest girls in Newport. But what made it so special, she had on shorty shorts. Now, shorty shorts, back in my days, Margaret and Betty were cheerleaders, and they had to wear long skirts to cover their ankles. So Harold and myself felt like we hit a home run. But we were driving down Walnut Street in this old car. I had this good-looking girl in the middle, and all of a sudden she knocked my head off. I said, what? She said, don't you ever do that again. I said, do what? What did I do? She said, listen here, you know what you did, and don't you ever do that again. What did I do? Well, we were bickering back and forth. And all of a sudden, I looked down, and through the little cubby hole, there was this little hand. And it went through there, and it stopped at the end of the shorty shorts. I started dying laughing, and this girl screamed, and Harold nearly ran off the road. He had a pet coon. that was, and it's a true story, really. that was in the back seat of that car, and we didn't know it. I got falsely accused, and the coon got the benefit. But you know, going back in my life has been Newport. I've been one of the lucky ones that's been able to come back. Fortunately, had a home to come to and a business to come into. But my mother called me in one time, and she said, John, I want to tell you something, son. I said, yes, ma'am. Said, you're going into the 10th grade. And said, you're going to play football for the next 3 years. Yes, ma'am. And she said, I want to tell you something. Batesville has beaten Newport 13 out of the last 14 years. And if you lose any game during those 3 years, don't come home because I'm not going to feed you. And that's the kitty knows that. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to get to go to the University of Arkansas, played Kappa Psi, made tons of friends, had the best time, just did everything that you do in college, but I couldn't wait to get back home. I wanted to come back home. And fortunately, of course, I had, believe it or not, I had an opportunity to go somewhere else, but I chose Newport. And listen to this. Now, you guys listen, learn from me. Got to come back and marry my high school sweetheart. My first love. And hey, I ought to score heavy. I hit a home run right there, and I ought to get a bunch of kisses tonight. But anyway, as you know, as I told you, we settled here. And fortunately, we had 4 great children. We have my life's ambition about family has totally been completed. We have I think, a great family. We have a good time together. We have fun together, and we're there for each other when we need each other. So the 4 and the grandchildren are all here, and I appreciate them coming too. But there was, and I'm not trying to be too high school Harry's, but there was something that, again, that I learned, and I'm sure the Newport graduates, and I know the class remembers this, but we were taught a song in the 10th grade. And it went like this. John, I'm not going to sing it, Won't that Lee? I know. But it went like this. Let me sing you a song of Newport and Newport High. Its stories yet untold. Its battles fought and victories won beneath the orange and black. Now Searcy has its number, and Batesville may be fine, but for our loyal fellowship, give me Newport and Newport High for mine. And that stayed with me. It meant so much to me. And I want to say this. Thank you, Mr. Mullins, for what you did for our school and our town. Thank you, James Eddy, for what you're doing for we the people in this great country. Martha, thank you for the outstanding career. It shows us as an example of what we can do with determination and hard work. And my friend, Billy Keaty, thank you for what you've done for all the kids all these years. You put Newport on the map, and we're in the sports world. And the foundation, thank you for what all you're doing. And most of all, Newport, thank you for letting me be part of it. And I appreciate this very much. This honor tonight has put the icing on the cake in this wonderful life that I've had. Thanks again.
The reason you like Newport so much, John, you made all those football players all those years pick up hay and pick up chunks out at your farm and didn't pay a quarter and said it was to get them in shape. Our last inductee is Bill Keaty. Incidentally, that story he was telling was about Billy's daddy when he shot John Miner. But Billy, our Billy, you Billy Jr., is he Billy the Third, or do you lose all that stuff after him? Ours is perfectly capable of doing the same thing, I can tell you. Coach Bill Keaty graduated from Newport High School in 1963. He went on to receive his undergraduate degree and master's in education at ASU. He started his coaching career as the Paracool junior high football coach in 1969. Then he coached its high school team. And then I think you were 1 year or 2 years at Sylvan Hills before returning to his love, as John Miner so eloquently explained at Newport. 1977, he became the Greyhounds head coach. And for 19 years thereafter, he was the Greyhounds head coach. He compiled a total career record of 199 wins, 55 losses, and 4 ties. He was named Conference Coach of the Year. Listen to this. He was named Conference Coach of the Year 17 times by the Arkansas High School Coaches Association. He won 17 conference championships, and he reached the state football playoffs 19 times. His Greyhound teams won state championships in 1981 and in 1991 and were state runner-ups in 1988 and 1989. During his career as head coach and athletic director, Coach Keaty was named Conference Coach of the Year, as I indicated, 17 times, Newport Daily Independent Man of the Year twice, inducted into the Arkansas High School Coaches Association Hall of Fame, also received the Coaches Association Lowell Manning Award for Outstanding Coach of the Year. In his honor, Newport's athletic facility was named for him, and I think it was in 1994, wasn't it, Billy? After teaching and coaching for 38 years, he retired in 2007 and was honored that year with the ASU Distinguished Alumnus Award. He became a commentator and is still a commentator on ASU football broadcasts, and he's an active supporter of the ASU Booster Club. He was the first recipient of the Newport Kiwanis Club's Distinguished Service Award in 1989 and the first recipient of the Jonesboro Sun's Best Under the Sun Coach of the Year Award in 1991. He and his wife Jennifer have 2 children, Catherine and Billy III, and 2 grandchildren, which are here. Grandchildren, I don't know if you know this because none of this was read. Now, he probably hadn't told you about it. He was one of the greatest high school quarterbacks you would ever see. He could run the football and he could throw the football, and he had leadership. He was offered and accepted. At that time, what they did was a 4-year football scholarship to college. It wasn't a year-to-year deal back then. He got a 4-year ride at ASU. Before he could start freshman football practice at ASU, he was invited to participate in the Arkansas High School All-Star Game, a big honor for Newport back then. Quarterback in the high school All-Star Game, and while holding for an extra point, got run into by a whole bunch of big guys and got his knee torn completely up. So he never played a down of college football, and the only time he ever had that football uniform in college on was to take a freshman picture. And he got 4 years free and played fraternity football and drank a lot of strong tea. So, grandkids, if he's never told you about it, you need to know that your grandfather was one of the greatest athletes to ever come out of Newport High School. I never met John F. Kennedy. I was just a kid when he was killed. He was an inspiration to a lot of people in my generation. He's still my favorite president. They said he had charisma. I'm sure he did. As you might imagine, over the course of the last X number of years, I've come in contact with a whole lot of folks who have, in varying degrees, influenced the lives of not tens of thousands, but indeed millions of people across the world, some of whom you've heard from tonight. I can truly tell you that I believe I've only known 3 people that had what I define as charisma. That doesn't mean the others aren't great. That doesn't mean the others didn't have tremendous qualities. Charisma is an overused word. We ascribe it to too many people often. When I talk about charisma, I'm talking about that magnetism that people want to be around the person who possesses it. It is a magnet that causes folks to want to follow, want to be there, want to be a part of, want to know, want to share with. I'm not going to tell you tonight who the other 2 people were that I have had the privilege to know that I thought had that true magnetism. But one of those 3 is my friend, Coach Bill Keating.
Well, I've been to the podium many times, and Jennifer said, well, why are you nervous tonight? Following that act there, pretty obvious. The governor and I have been friends a long time. Governor, thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for being here tonight also. But most of all, thank you for our 50 years of friendship. It's meant a lot to me and my family. Governor Beebe and I, you know, we're educated here in Newport, and a number of the inductees talked about their education and what they learned. Well, we learned some things too. You take $1.50 and this thing right here out the Silver Moon, back in our day they'd fill it up with beer. And now, Governor, you're still the best governor Arkansas has ever had. And yeah, there you go. But you did have just a little bit of devil in you at times. I would like to congratulate the inductees from last year and this year, and what a unbelievable group of people that I joined. My buddies from Arkansas State, Bobo and Matt and Van were back there earlier and said, "What are you doing up there?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing up there. I'm the chairman of the selection committee." Truth. Hey, I'm one of those you can't miss deals. Oh, Opie Taylor once said about Andy Griffith, "He ain't so dumb." Oh, Lordy. Thanks, Foundation, and thanks to those who nominated me, and it is a great honor to be included with such a prestigious group. I've been lucky, like all of the folks that's been up here. I've had a wonderful family and support, great friends like the governor. Bill and Ernestine Keaty, my parents, what an odd couple they were, but they were a loving couple, great parents. Always had their support. My two sisters, Linda and Cynthia, and their family have always been there for me, and I love them for that. My wife, Jennifer, and her family, I've always said Jennifer's the best wife any man could have, and without a doubt, the best coach's wife any coach could have. So I love her for that. My son, Billy, and his wife, Brandy, and my two grandsons, Will and Jake, have always been there for me. My daughter, Catherine, has always been there for me through thick and thin. My two sisters, Linda and Cynthia, and their families have always been there for me, and I love them for that. So I have been a very lucky person. When I was in the 7th grade, I wanted to play ball. And I knew I had to get permission from my parents to play ball when I got into the 8th grade, because back in my day, you couldn't play football until you became a grade pup. We didn't have 7th grade ball or pee-wee ball. And after I was in the 7th grade and found out all the girls had crushes on the 8th grade boys who played football, I really wanted to play then. And what I didn't know, though, was my father wanted me to play probably worse than I wanted to play, but he didn't want me to know that. Well, anyway, when it came time for me to get permission to play football in the 8th grade for the pups, I had to ask my mother and dad if it was okay. And my mother said, "Well, Billy, you know, you're not very big." And then my daddy butted in and said, "Hey, you got to be tough to play football, John. You can hear it, can't you? I don't know whether you're tough or not. You know, that's a tough man's game." And I said, "Daddy, I'll be tough enough." And he said, "Well, your mother and I will let you play under 3 conditions. Number 1, we expect you to act right. Number 2, we expect you to make good grades. And number 3, if you really, really want to play more than anything in the world, you won't quit." I said, "I promise." I said, I'll make my grades, I'll act right, and I'll guarantee you, I'll never quit. They couldn't make me quit. The first day of practice out here on the track field, back in those days we practiced in full pads. They didn't have shorts and run-throughs and all that. You just went out there and got after it and may the best man win. It was like today, about 100 degrees, and there I went out there with my uniform on as an 8th grader, and my helmet was about 2 sizes too big, and brand, it kind of went around my head. And for all of you people that are wondering about my age, it didn't have a face mask. So, that was a ways back. But anyway, I was a proud gray pup. And I walked out there and I was ready to practice. Well, I found out that it was going to be a little bit tough. We got out there and the coaches said, "All right, guys, we're going to have a drill called the blood pit drill." I thought, what in the world is this? Coaches said, "We're going to put one player down here, and he's going to have the football, and we're going to have another player down here, and that player's supposed to tackle the guy with the football. We're going to find out who is tough and who does have courage." Well, when it came my time to tackle, as an 8th grader, weighed about 110 pounds, I looked up and the guy that I was going against was a fella by the name of Dwight Stump Gill. And he was a 9th grader, and one of the few 9th graders that got to play as an 8th grader. And he didn't have any front teeth because he didn't have a face mask on his helmet either. And he was bad business. And I was thinking, oh me, well here's my time to shine. I can show the world. Those girls will love me after this. And old Stump had that football underneath his arm like that. And old Keaty was out there ready to go, and the coaches blew the whistle, and we ran together, and bam, he killed me. I mean, he killed me. He clobbered me. The back of my helmet hit that hard ground out there, and I got up trying not to cry, and all I could see was stars, and I was thinking, oh, what am I doing? And then we ran at the end of practice and ran, and the coaches finally blew the whistle, and we went in to get dressed, and I was walking up Wilkerson Drive to my home on Holden Avenue, and all the way home I was thinking, oh Lord, what can I come up with? What kind of excuse to quit? And when I got home, my dad was there, and he said, son, how'd practice go today? And you know what I said. I said, oh, Dad, it was great, man. I can't wait to get back out there tomorrow. Then I prayed for rain. It never rained. It's like here. It never rains. Well, when I was a 12th grader in high school, and I was a pretty good player, the governor did me a heck of a favor there. He made me sound like I was really good, but I was a pretty good player. We had a good team. And my folks, after the home games, wanted me to always come home and check in. And, you know, they'd see how I was doing, and then I could go back out and have a date or run around with the guys or go over to the Legion Hut for a dance or whatever the situation brought. Well, anyway, there was this one game that I felt like I really had cut up. I mean, I showed out. I threw a couple of touchdown passes, and my old buddy Larry Madison back there came in from Monroe, Louisiana tonight to be with us. He was one of the guys that caught one of those touchdown passes, and I ran for another a couple of touchdowns, made a bunch of tackles. But anyway, I got home to check in with my mother and daddy as they required, and I was feeling pretty proud about myself. And I walked in, and my mother always asked me the same question, Billy, are you hurt? Are you okay? I said, Mother, I'm fine. And my daddy interrupted. I got something I want to ask you. Yes, sir, Daddy. He said, you remember there late in the 3rd quarter when it was 3rd down and 4, and you took off around right in and they knocked you out of bounds a yard short of a 1st down? I said, yes, sir, Daddy. He said, why in the hell didn't you lower your shoulder pads and run over those guys and make a 1st down? And then my mother, she'd had enough. She said, Keaty, you hush. You know you're proud of that boy. You know you love him. Why, he's the best player the Greyhounds have. Of course, you know mamas always think what? Their son's the best player the Greyhounds have. And then he kind of said, you get in on time tonight. I got that tough love from my daddy, but at the same time, I got that sweet motherly love from my mother. I'll be all right, hold on. I found out later in life as a coach, there are times with your football team, you have to give them that tough love, and you may not want to. But then at the same time, that same group of guys, you may have to give them that sweet motherly love. And there's 3 things that I always expected of our players. Act right, make your grades, never quit. So you know what? You can learn a lot from your parents. My first job was as a junior high coach at Paragould. The governor mentioned that. The reason I got that job was because of people like Mr. Mullins and John Miner and Jeff Ellis. Those kind of people had called over there and given me a great recommendation, so they hired me to be their junior high football coach. And Dr. Brown, when I went over there, I found out that Paragould wasn't like Newport. It was a big basketball school, and They hadn't won many ball games. Matter of fact, it was almost the opposite of Newport. But I was very fortunate. We had a couple of real good teams. Matter of fact, we beat Jonesboro and Blytheville, even beat Newport. And so I was doing pretty good as a coach. And a job came open at Newport, and it was for the third assistant coach in junior high. And it was part-time junior high coach and a 7th grade coach. But I wanted that job because I wanted to come back home. My lifelong dream was to coach here at Newport. And so I called Mr. Mullins, and I said, Mr. Mullins, I understand you have a job opening, and I would love to come and visit with you about the opening. And Mr. Mullins said, Billy, you come tomorrow, and we'll talk. Well, I got in my car at Paragould and put on my coat and tie and drove over to Newport. Mr. Mullins' office was right over there where the junior high is now. And when he saw me coming in, he grabbed his hat and grabbed his pipe and said, Billy, come on, get in the car with me, and I'll talk to you. And we drove up to Spoonie Owens service station, and we were sitting there, and Mr. Mullins said, now, Billy, if you want this job, we would love to have you come home. He said, as a matter of fact, if you want this job, it's yours. And ladies and gentlemen, I was just about the happiest guy in the world at that time. And then he said, but I think you'll be making a mistake. He said, you're already the head junior high coach and doing real well at Paragould. He said, you come back to Newport, no matter how much you love it, he said, you're going to be the lowest man on the totem pole. And you don't need to do that. He said, you're going to be successful over there, and pretty soon you're going to be their high school head football coach. And from there, you can come home and coach the Greyhounds. Well, I thanked him because I knew he was telling me the right thing for me in my future. And I got in the car, and I was down and out as I drove home. And Jennifer and I both loved Paragould, but that was my chance to come home, and I'd missed it. Well, Mr. Mullins was right. A couple of years later, I became the head coach at Paragould. And they had struggled over there. They hadn't won a conference championship. Earl Walton had in 25 years. And my 2 years as a head coach over there, we were 10-0 and 10-0 and won back-to-back championships, which gave me the opportunity to go to a much larger school in North Little Rock and make a lot more money. But I was there only 1 year, and I found out the job at Newport had come open because Coach Counts had decided to resign and be the athletic director. Well, I picked up the phone, and John, I don't know if you remember the phone call or not, but I called John Mountner. He was on the school board, and I asked him about the job. And he said, Billy, we didn't think you'd be interested. You're at a much larger school making a heck of a salary. And I told John I'd love to come home. He said, I tell you what you do. As soon as we hang up, you call Mr. Mullins. He's going to be really excited to hear that you want to come home. I called Mr. Mullins. I came to visit him. He never mentioned that first time that I came over to interview. 2 weeks later, he called me and offered me the job. And I think you folks know the rest of the story. I got to come home. Jennifer, as I mentioned earlier, was a great coach's wife. Most of the time. Couple more stories, by the way, and I'm out of here. We'd won a ball game over here one Friday night, and I got home, and I could tell she was upset. And I said, what in the world's wrong? She said, well, I'll tell you what's wrong. Mr. So-and-so sits behind me, a couple of rows behind me every game, and he's on you constantly. And I said, well, hon, you know, that's just the life of a coach and a coach's wife, and he doesn't mean anything, you know, personal by it. Just act like you don't hear him. Everything will be all right. A couple of weeks later, we blew somebody out here. We won it 35-0, or a lopsided game. And I got home, and well, she was hot. I said, okay, what's wrong? She said, Mr. So-and-so stood up and said, I can't believe that's the worst call I've ever seen a coach make in my life. How can you be so dumb? And she said, I stood up and I glared at him, and he wouldn't look back at me. And she said, I kept glaring at him. And I said, Mom, you know, I appreciate you defending me, but you can't do that. Just, if you don't mind, I love you to death, but just sit down and ignore it. And she walked out of the room, turned right back around and came in, and she said, I've got something to ask you. And I said, what's that? She said, well, why did you call such a dumb-ass call? And then there was my son, Billy. And Billy, this is a true story. You don't know this, I don't think. But Billy was kind of the hero on the junior high team, and he'd moved up to the 10th grade, and he was a little bitty guy, and we had some studs out there. I mean, we had guys that 10th graders didn't play. We'd gone through 2 days. It's time to start the season. And Jennifer said, what do you think the chances of Billy getting to play are? And I said, well, Mom, they're really good, because I said, he's the best player on the team for catching snaps from the center for extra point and field goals. And I said, that's really important. And he is, honestly, the best one. And he did. He had great hand-eye coordination. And I said, but you need to understand something. I said, he needs to do good. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know, everybody, what they're going to be saying is that kid's playing because he's coach's son. I said, so he doesn't need to mess up. If he messes up, I'm going to have to take his position. She said, do you do that with all the players? If they mess up one time, do you take their position? I said, well, no. But he's the coach's son. She said, you better hope that he doesn't drop one of those snaps. I'm going to dress the rest of it up. She said, if he drops one of those snaps and you take his position, she said, you're going to be sleeping on that couch for the rest of the year. Now, Billy, that's been about 20 years ago, and I would like to publicly thank you, son, for not dropping any of those snaps. I might add, Billy became a heck of a good player for us his junior and senior year. I won't brag on him, but he really was, and I was proud of him. You know, the way I look at it, and I've told you that, I've been blessed. I mean, I have been blessed. In general, you said something about you don't really, know how Newport is now. Newport's great. It's a wonderful place. I wouldn't leave it for anything in the world. We got wonderful people. Heck, we got a golf tournament here that the people have begged to get back to Newport, the people that have lived here before, to see their friends. It is a wonderful community, and for you people that live here, know that I'm not just blowing smoke. But I was blessed to graduate from a Hall of Fame school. I had Hall of Fame classmates. I had Hall of Fame friends. Had a Hall of Fame teachers, people that cared for us. For you that were here last year, you heard the governor talk about how people cared for him. I had that same thing here. I was able to come back to Newport and coach at that same Hall of Fame school. And I worked for a bunch of Hall of Fame administrators. Some of them are in here tonight. And I worked for a bunch of Hall of Fame school board members. And a bunch of you are here tonight. And I worked side by side with some of the best teachers in the country, not just the state. And I was proud to be with them. And I would say this too, I'd say almost every one of them were great Greyhound fans. But also, I worked in a situation where our booster club was outstanding. The fan base was unbelievable. We had people, as you know, that if you didn't get to a game early out here, you weren't going to get a seat. We were the envy of the state. We would go on the road. And we had more people than anywhere we went. I know the Jonesboro Sun one time wrote an article about the Halloween colors overtaking Hurricane Stadium. And that's no exaggeration. And, you know, I think if you are going to be a successful coach, you have to have outstanding assistant coaches who are loyal and work hard with you. And I had that, and junior high coaches and 7th grade coaches. And of course, to win ball games, we all know you have to have talent. And I had some great players here. But I had some players that weren't so great. But I was just as proud of them as I was the great players, because I would guarantee you this. Those guys, when they left Newport, were just as proud of the heroes, because they played with that big heart, with that Greyhound tradition, and I hope that I had some good things to help them along the way in their lives. This has been a wonderful honor for me also. I was coming home one summer while I was still coaching, and Buddy Black, who was the voice of the Greyhounds, did a great job, but he was with me, and it was about midnight. We'd been to the dog track, and we were coming back. And we were about to Wallenberg, about midnight, and Bud said, "Coach, if you had your choice, would you rather win a state championship or beat Batesville?" And I said, "Bud, you know the answer to that." My daddy brought me up. I said, "I'd rather beat Batesville any day of the year." I was the coach 19 years here. Little John, you one of them that started out, Manor. And we beat those Pioneers every year. So the way I look at it, I've had 19 great seasons coaching the Greyhounds. I want to thank all of y'all for being here tonight. I know it's hot, and I know you put up with a lot of us, but thank you. And again, this means so much to me. And as the governor said earlier, go Hounds, go.
Well, there are several of us that can remember playing in that last Thanksgiving Day game, 1968, right over here. Roger Brand, James Eddy, me, Mike Brand, several of you out there. It was a struggle, and I mentioned it last year, but I always like to bring it up. It was the one game that I asked Coach Counts if I could run the ball one time, because I was just a lineman. I was much bigger in those days. I asked him if I could run the ball one time, and he said, "Have a seat, has-been." Y'all remember that? You remember that. We carried him off the field. We barely won, 46-0. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a Hall of Fame night. I'm so glad you were all here. Take those little brochures that you have that have those key points about what has been accomplished because of what you have given. Look at those things. Think about what you can do for this association again next year. Next year there'll be 5 more inductees. It'll be a great night next year, and I hope you all come back. For those of you who just got inducted, please stay for a few minutes to have your pictures taken along with last year's. Thank you again. God bless. Go Hounds.
Jackson's Funeral Home and the Jackson family have been serving our friends and neighbors in Jackson County during some of the most difficult times of their lives for nearly 60 years. We believe the highest standard of care is achieved when people are given the tools needed to make the most informed decision for the benefit of their family. For us, there's no greater honor than to care for our friends and our neighbors in their time of need. The Jackson's Funeral Homes, the 1900 block of Malcolm Avenue in Newport, phone number 870-523-5822.
George Kell Motors in Newport is not your typical new car dealership. Sure, we've got a great selection of cars, trucks, and SUVs, great prices, and an award-winning service department. But did you know that we can customize your vehicle to make it look exactly like you want it to look? Come see us. We got wheels, tires, lift kits, window tint, any and everything you want to personalize your vehicle to make it unique. Just come to George Kell Motors off of Highway 67, exit 85 in Newport. Let's get started on your ride.